All right, good morning. I'm Blair Taylor, CEO of Tennesseans for Quality Early Education. Welcome to this on-demand presentation of our new report series, The Economics of Tennessee's Childcare Crisis. First, I want to thank our sponsors of this report. They are a mix of chambers of commerce and business organizations, as well as some philanthropic foundations from across our great state, all of whom have a great appreciation for the role that childcare plays in our state's workforce and economy. I now have the honor and privilege of welcoming Dr. Clive Belfield. Clive is the principal economist for the Center for Benefit Cost Studies in Education at the University of Pennsylvania. He is also a professor of economics at Queens College at the City University of New York. Welcome, Clive.
Good morning, Blair.
Clive has come alongside our survey partners, Zogby Analytics, to analyze the survey data that's the basis for this report that you'll hear about in a minute, and to do the economic modeling that has helped us understand the financial impact of childcare on Tennessee's economy. So now, Clive, I'm going to turn it over to you to share an overview of the survey and review the labor market and economic impacts of what Tennessee's working parents of young children revealed.
Thank you so much, Blair. So we did a very large survey of parents across the state during the summer of 2022. 2,500 parents is a lot of parents for a survey of investigating this topic. The children are age under 9, and there is a small margin of error in the survey, but given the large analytical sample that we're working with and the fact that the sample broadly reflects the population across Tennessee of working families, the survey is representative across the state of Tennessee for working families and their childcare circumstances. In addition, there was oversampling for regions so that we could look in detail at regional reports reflecting the different conditions across the state. So the survey is in good shape to tell us quite a lot about the early education context and circumstances of working families.
Great.
Now, it's no surprise that working families face a lot of economic obstacles in trying to get childcare that meets their needs. What we typically look at are 3 groups. The main focus is on the parents, and parents face a lot of different, sometimes compound problems in getting childcare that they need. So it's hard for them to find jobs that match their childcare availability and access. And when they do get jobs, often those jobs are disrupted. Either they have to take a bit of time off, or they're disrupted while they're in their workplace. And often they face career opportunities that are not as advantageous as families who have childcare that meets their needs. So parents lose quite a bit across their earnings potential for when they have inadequate, insufficient childcare. We can calculate those losses and put money values on them, and those money values are very large. If we take the average parent who is struggling to find childcare, their losses are somewhere around $5,500 a year while they're struggling to find childcare. So those are losses in income, losses in productivity, losses in career opportunities. That's per parent. That's a lot of money over the years in which a young child is not in school and needs childcare. Parents lose quite a bit, but businesses also lose from lower productivity, reduced revenue, costs in hiring workers to cover shifts or to train workers. And that means higher costs and lower profits. So businesses lose too when families can't access childcare. And then the state loses in terms of tax revenues. Tax revenues because productivity is lower, but also tax revenues because economic growth is lower. Now, if we look across the state, there are about 300,000 working parents in Tennessee. So that adds up to a lot of money each year. As you see there, about $2.6 billion lost. Most of that is losses that parents face, but there are also significant losses to businesses and to taxpayers. $2.6 billion is a lot of money. It's a lot of money when you look in terms of the Tennessee economy, and it's a lot of money when you look at the Tennessee state budget. So these are not minor problems for individual parents, and they're not minor problems when you look across the state. They're pretty significant economic losses due to insufficient childcare.
Yeah, wow.
Now, we can break this down a little bit and see how it works out for parents in terms of employment disruptions. And as you can see here, more than 80% of working parents reported employment disruptions in the last 6 months due to inadequate childcare. So in other words, this is a problem for most parents, almost all parents at some point. And what sort of problems do they have? Well, they have the ultimate problem of losing their job. They have a problem of moving from full-time to part-time or being unable to take a full-time job. And then we can see some of them are not able to take opportunities for promotion, and others have to leave the workforce themselves. We can say that's voluntary, but it's a voluntary decision made more pressing because they simply can't find the childcare that they need. So you add all these up and they come to this large economic burden that we talked about per parent. There are a lot of ways in which your job can be affected if you don't have adequate childcare. And when we think about adequate childcare, we normally think about three things. Parents need access to quality and affordable childcare. That's what they need, a simple phrase, access to quality and affordable childcare. And as you can see here, most parents report that they do not have access. 70% find this a challenge. The quality of the childcare is not ideal. About half of parents say that. And then affordability. Can they afford this in the context of their jobs and their other expenses? And we can see that more than half of them say that childcare is simply not affordable for them in their current conditions. So there are a lot of economic pressures. These all add up. We looked at this regionally, and we see differences by region. I won't go into the numbers here. You can look at the numbers for each of the regions that we looked at. You can see issues of affordability, quality, and access. You can also see issues of work-related challenges. Each state is different. If you're in yours, each region is different, excuse me. If you're in your own region, the two things to look at really are, what is the quality of childcare that is available for children in your region? So that's the first concern. And then the second concern is, what does the labor market look like? How does it help parents, either by employers or occupations or industries or availability of public money? So each region differs, and it mostly differs because of the childcare options and the labor market options. And so each region of the state can look at that and say whether this is mostly a problem of childcare options or a problem of the labor market or a problem of the two in combination. So those numbers are calculated region-wide as well as statewide to give some context across the state.
Yeah, that's great, Clive. Thank you. And we chose those regions in particular that they represent about half the state. They are 6 regions that TQEE is working with in partnership with to support them in developing early care and education plans and implementing early education plans for their community. And we're thrilled to have them as partners. And folks can learn more about our Bright Start Tennessee network when you go to our website.
Thank
Clive,
you.
thank you.
Thanks.
Anything else you were going to add on that?
I don't think so. I went quite quickly. I think that's fine.
Yeah, you did great. And the numbers sort of speak for themselves.
They do. They're large numbers. The pandemic did not help at all. It made things slightly worse. And this has been a problem for a while. And it's a problem the parents face each year before their children are in kindergarten or first grades.
Well, really, really appreciate your expertise in helping us understand this economic impact, and particularly on the workforce of today. And I'm going to spend the next few slides talking a little bit about the impact on the workforce of tomorrow and sort of where to from here. Our report has a couple of charts and graphs, one of which is this one, which many people will recognize. This is the famous Heckman curve. This is a Nobel Prize winning economist, James Heckman, which this curve depicts what he calls the economics of human potential. And I think we often mistakenly think of K-12 school as where children learn, but in fact, the brain develops more in the first 5 years of life than any other time, with rapidly expanding neural connections. That sounds very sciencey, and it is, but literally more than 1 million new neural connections form every second in the early years of human development. And it's basically wiring the brain for future learning, as well as not just learning, but for future behavior and also health. And in fact, it's actually the caregiving during those early years, the sort of regular interactions with caregivers, like singing and talking and playing and reading, that stimulates the formation of those neural connections. So that's known as serve and return interaction. We learned that from the Harvard Center for Developing Child and the brain science that they've really delved into there. And so really, regardless of the setting, whether it's at home with parents or in childcare or other learning settings, it's the quality of that care that determines whether a child's developing brain is actually forming those neural connections and effectively providing a weak or a strong foundation for future learning and development. And so that's why this Heckman curve here shows that the return on investment is highest the earlier we invest, because how consequential those early years are in brain development and laying the foundation. And I think for most of us, it makes intuitive sense, right? If we get things right early, we reduce the catch up and the remediation that has to happen, typically at a higher cost later on in school, with special education and other types of remediation. So the main point here and the main takeaway from this slide is that it's been well documented by economists that investing early and investing in quality care pays dividends. Slide. So here we have a couple of charts as we're continuing to think about the child care and the issue of affordability that Clive referenced earlier. So why can't families access the quality childcare they need and the affordable childcare that they need? And here are some charts that provide some insights into that. That chart on the left there depicts effectively, there you have several examples of colleges, post-secondary institutions in Tennessee there in blue, and the cost of in-state tuition for those institutions. And then in red, you've got the average cost of center-based care for infants and toddlers, and then the average cost of home-based care for infants and toddlers that was recently documented in a study from University of Tennessee. And you can see that really childcare costs as much or more than, in some cases, as in-state college tuition in Tennessee. And that's really the same situation across the nation. And then you juxtapose that with the fact that nearly a third of children under the age of 6 are living in households with annual incomes under $40,000. And actually, if you look at that next blue bar, the 40 to 60,000 range, if you add that in and say that the number of children living in households under 60,000 is actually almost half of children under age 6. That's pretty substantial. You think about that juxtaposed with the cost, which is about comparable with college, and think, wow, if for the average family, if you got, say, a family with two parents and two children, maybe a preschooler and a toddler, you could be paying as much as or more than $20,000 a year for childcare. And we know from the United Ways of Tennessee, their Alice report, they've calculated an average sort of survival budget for two parents and an infant and preschooler at $65,000 a year. So half of children are living in households that are making less than a survival budget income, and they are challenged with affording childcare. So that's the context as we think about affordability. The next slide is, speaks to the issue of the childcare workforce problem, and that's it's a childcare worker pay issue. If you look at that chart on the right, that chart shows us that because effectively parents can't afford to pay for care, that really puts downward pressure on childcare wages as providers try to keep the cost down for parents, right? So the result is that the average childcare worker in Tennessee earns less than a parking lot attendant in Tennessee. And that's why we're seeing childcare workers leave the field, or they're just declining to enter it altogether, and as they opt for more competitive paying jobs. This drives the availability of childcare supply, and it's also a major factor that influences quality, because it's, as we were speaking about earlier, it's that caregiver and the consistency and the skill and the nurturing they provide that creates that quality. So in a nutshell, the childcare supply isn't meeting parent demand today, as Clive has made clear to us through his report. And in large part, that's because of this tension between childcare workforce compensation and affordability for parents. And so really the business model for childcare, it's difficult at best, and it's untenable at worst. So government and business have a role to play, right? What can be done? What is being done? Government financial aid is pretty limited. There are some new strategies emerging in Tennessee, which is exciting. There are a couple of federal funding streams that come through the State Department of Human Services that are the major sources of child care financial aid for low-income families, although we know from our parent survey that very few of these families are actually tapping this financial aid. Our survey showed that 8% of families are tapping this financial aid from government, this tuition assistance. There are also about 20,000 children, I'm just reading my notes here, 20,000 children from birth through age 12 that are participating in these programs today, as reported by the Tennessee Department of Human Services. There are also about 20,000 children participating in federally funded Head Start programs, and the state voluntary pre-K program, primarily for 4-year-olds, and it's operated by school districts, that's funded to serve roughly 18,000 children. So these programs have limited availability, though, and wait lists and parent demand for them are persistent. Based on these numbers, one could reasonably estimate that in total, no more than about 20% of the 300,000 children under age 6 with all parents in the workforce get some form of financial assistance. So still opportunity for government to play a role, but business also has a role to play. I'm going to move us to this chart here. Businesses are stepping up, and we've talked to businesses, and we've explored and read a lot about it. Businesses are starting to get creative and offer benefits that are family friendly for workers that can support their childcare needs. And in fact, when we asked parents in our survey about whether or not and how and the extent to which those kinds of benefits are important and motivating for them to accept a new job offer, we saw that 74% of them said that flexible working days are important, 70% that flexible working hours are important, and you saw half are looking for work from home options now, but particularly this whole financial assistance for childcare as a support, and then childcare center at work site. Those are actually very important. Nearly half said that those are very important. And so there's an opportunity here for businesses who are interested in attracting and retaining employees, especially in this in a labor market where we're continuing to see labor shortages. An opportunity for businesses to sort of come to the table with some family-friendly benefits. Lastly, just want to highlight the major takeaway from this report, which is, there really is a triple bottom line for high quality childcare. Tennessee families, businesses, and taxpayers all benefit when we can get this right. We think it's time Tennessee made high quality childcare a priority strategy for building our state's human capital. And we look forward to this report serving as a call to action and to working with our partners in business and in government to come to the table and work alongside parents to make to really create our workforce of today and workforce of tomorrow. So with that, I think that's a wrap. Clive, thank you again for all the work that you did to make this report possible. Your expertise was invaluable, and we again appreciate all of our sponsors. And if anybody would like to access copies of this report, you can do so at our website, tqee.org. That's the specific link right there, should you want to go right directly to the child care report page. Thank you all for joining us this morning, and we are concluded.